And we are live.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Scranton and Abington's Planning Association, the SAPA virtual open house. This is the culmination of a really great partnership between the 9 SAPA municipalities, Lackawanna County, the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, and the consultant Environmental Planning and Design out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So a few things before we start. For everyone in here, your video is off and your audio is muted by default. General questions can be sent via the Zoom chat in the chat box, and we ask that you please just hold them until the Q&A session at the end. In regards to those questions, I know that some folks here may have questions about individual municipal ordinances. Now, SAPA is a group of 9 working together to share land uses. So, and we'll explain a little bit more about this later. Every municipality has their own ordinance. So we're going to be entertaining general questions today, but, and I emphasize but, all of the contact information from anyone who is in any of the SAPA municipalities will be given. So you can contact the SAPA representatives after the meeting and discuss any specifics of individual municipal ordinances that you may have with them. So my name is Ted Ritzik. I am a planner for the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about what we do. So I work in the Governor's Center for Local Government Services. We work with state and local governments like Lackawanna County and the SAPA municipalities. And we know that in Pennsylvania, there is some decentralized governance. So a long time ago when our Commonwealth was founded, our forefathers had a very good idea. That idea was to break Pennsylvania up into a lot of small municipalities and allow for local control, because hundreds of years ago, you really couldn't govern an area this large and this vast and this separated. Time has moved forward and we live in a different age now. So we try to act as a help desk for local municipalities. And we recognize, and SAPA certainly does, is that, you know, there are regional problems and those problems transcend municipal lines. So what we're going to talk about today is how the SAPA project transcends those municipal lines and deals with regional issues, how the SAPA plan has brought regional perspectives and has given the region some regional objectives that they're meeting and implementing the zoning ordinances, and they have the opportunity to share land uses across the region. So with that, we are going to start the presentation from Lackawanna County and EPD. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, here we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Yep. Okay, I'm Mary Liz Donato. I'm the Regional Planning Manager for Lackawanna County. I'm the project manager for this zoning ordinance update project. As you can see, the 9 municipalities are listed there on the right: Clark Green, Clark Summit, Dalton, Dunmore, Newton Township, Scranton, South Abington Township, Waverly Township, West Abington Township. This is a general map of the SAPA municipalities. Carolyn, when she does her presentation, is going to have a little bit more specific maps to look at. Okay, a little bit of background information about the SAPA project. Back in about 2006, there was some discussion about doing multi-municipal planning among some of the municipalities. It started in the Abingtons and kind of extended then into Scranton and Dunmore, and then out into the Dalton, West Abington, that area as well. These municipalities, when they started talking, realized the benefits of doing planning together. They'd have a shared vision for the future, ability to obtain additional finance resources because the state looks favorably upon municipalities that do regional planning. There was cost sharing and cost savings arrangements for this whole project as a whole. If it facilitates economic development on a coordinated strategy rather than a competing one, and then the cooperative zoning to allocate the land uses to the most appropriate locations within the planning region, and we'll get a little bit more involved with that discussion. All the municipalities entered in intergovernmental agreements. Back in 2009 to 2014, the actual comprehensive plan for this region was adopted by the 9 municipalities. And now we're in what we call the phase 2, which is to update the zoning ordinances in general conformance with that plan. And this actually started back in 2017, and it will be concluding in May when the last municipality adopts their ordinance. Why is the county involved? It's kind of difficult for 9 municipalities to kind of coordinate things, so that they approached us and asked us if we would help them. We agreed. We coordinate and administer the project. We applied for the grant funding. We kind of set up the meetings and act as a go-between with everybody. The entire project was funded through DCED, which was 50% of the project. Lackawanna County contributed a portion, and then the rest of the funding was divided up among the local municipalities based on a formula of population, square miles, and assessment value. The 9 municipalities, representatives from the 9 municipalities, we interviewed 4 consultants, and then it was the local municipalities' decision to hire environmental planning and design. Okay, so this is how we kind of did the ordinance development and the adoption process. So since 2017, we've been holding steering committee meetings with the county, DCD, and the consultant, and they're made up of representatives from each municipality. We kind of rotated within each of the municipalities, unfortunately, until the virus hit. Actually, the project should have been wrapped up a year ago, but because of the virus, we had to delay it, and we've moved everything to a virtual platform. We've also had several individual planning commission meetings with the county, DCED, and the consultant. These were the planning commission's monthly public meetings, so there were public members in attendance when we were having our discussions on the local level. There was a kind of brainstorming among the municipalities to discuss the sharing of land uses, which was ultimately determined by each individual community. And everybody did agree to provide for the land uses that were most appropriate for their community character. Right now, we're in the Planning Commission recommendation and review by the county process. All planning commissions within the municipalities have recommended that the ordinances move forward. The county is in the process of going through them and making sure everything is in order before the public hearings and adoptions, which will be in April and May. The notices of the dates, times, and locations will be in the Scranton Times on March 22nd and March 29th. With the exception of Clark Summit. Clark Summit was ahead of schedule because they worked through the virus and they were able to complete their portion. They held their public hearing and their adoption back in November, and the ordinance was adopted in December. So their portion is already finished. The ordinance does not go into effect until the remaining 8 municipalities adopt. And when the last municipality adopts, which right now is going to be Waverly Township, then all 9 will go into effect. Each municipality maintains control over their portion of the ordinance, which was designed on a regional concept. And then the result is we're going to have 9 generally consistent ordinances. They're going to have shared definitions and shared zoning district classifications determined by regional transects, which Carolyn is going to explain a little bit more in detail. Again, separate ordinances, but they're going to look alike, basically. Each municipality is going to have their set of land uses listed within their ordinances and their transects. Okay, trying to give you an idea of what land use sharing involves. So we have a municipality, and within this municipality, the land uses are conducive to a rural area, single family homes, campgrounds, agriculture, golf courses, things that you would see in a rural area. And right next to municipality A, we have municipality B, which is a developed community where they have a downtown, they've got bars, restaurants, commercial, industrial. The way the state planning laws are written right now, if you have your own zoning ordinance, so if we had 9 separate zoning ordinances, not based on a regional plan, everybody would have to provide for every legal land use within each municipality. By doing this project, we're extending that boundary, if you look at the yellow, to include the entire region. So somewhere within that region, every legal land use needs to be provided, but not necessarily within each individual community. Okay, so based on this, our consultant developed a series of transects based on characteristics of the municipalities, the densities, the land uses, and then we came up with providing for all of the land uses within the region, again, determined by each municipality. But the characteristics of the region are, we have a city characteristic, which is your urban, densely populated areas, which are Scranton and Dunmore. We have our town characteristics, which are Clarks Green and Clarks Summit. And these are smaller communities with defined business districts and some denser residential areas. And then we have our suburban area, which is South Abington Township, which is basically your strip highway commercial areas, scattered residential development, some rural areas, but no defined downtown community character. And the last 4 are our rural communities: Dalton, Newton, Waverly, West Abington, agriculture, open space, forestry, and some village centers within those areas. Okay, and just to give you a general example of land uses that are generally provided for on a regional basis, again, these aren't specific, but these are general land uses that could be shared among municipalities. Agricultural operations, generally found in rural and suburban areas, but you wouldn't find them within cities or towns. Apartment buildings, generally found within cities or towns or suburban areas where there's infrastructure and utilities, not necessarily conducive to rural areas where there's poor infrastructure, especially the lack of public sewer and also public water. Highway commercial, you would find within city and suburban areas along major arterial highways, but not within a downtown or in a rural area. And then examples of the land uses that are generally provided for on an individual municipal basis. And these are the uses that you will see in all of the ordinances. Single family dwellings, group homes, because they're regulated by the federal government and state law that they need to be treated the same as single family dwellings. Essential services and public buildings, religious institutions, local commercial, small businesses and home occupations, and then forestry, which is again protected by state law, must be allowed everywhere. Again, this is just a small example of the types of land uses that you would find in each individual municipality. The ordinances are available on the county's website, right on the homepage. It says review SAPA ordinances if anybody wants to look at them. They're also available on some of the communities' websites, not all of them, and we'll get further into detail with that as we move along. So with that, I am going to transition to Carolyn Yeagle, who is from Environmental Planning and Design, the consultant. She's going to try and explain how they came up with the transects.
Thank you very much, Mary Liz. Is everyone able to see the map that's on the screen? All right. Pulling from a number of things that Mary Liz has hit on, as well as Ted introduced at the beginning, this consideration for land use is an ultimate driver and premise of this project. And that work has stemmed from the multi-municipal comprehensive plan. This is shown on the screen is the land use map that is as part of that document. I'll make that a little bigger. And from these considerations of the land use, each of the 9 municipalities took a look at what it currently is providing as part of its ordinances And we also assessed that. And taking a look then at, there were over 51 districts, or there are 51 districts that presently exist within the 9 municipalities. That is a lot of zoning distinction, right? So when the considerations for what was happening presently on land use and the potential for different kinds of land use within the municipalities, each of them took a look at what the relationship was between really what was agricultural, what was generally conservation oriented, what was residential, what was commercial, industrial, and a few instances of institutional land uses. So those broad categories were shaping sort of the canvas on which everyone started to work. We took a look on the ground and from the air of each of the municipalities and different types of character. So in addition to the land uses, we then compiled all 9 municipal zoning maps as they presently exist and were mapped. So you can see that the grain of some of the communities has very large sweeping districts, and other municipalities have very small or intricate kinds of patterns to their different zoning designations. What we wanted to do was understand that the 51 districts really had some commonalities, and we boiled it down to about 24 zoning districts. There were some variations to those, of course, when we got into some final land use distinctions, but keeping in mind that throughout the 9 municipalities, these 24 sort of character distinctions exist. There is the opportunity for looking at everything from a rural, very natural resource intensive area to a very urban type of environment, all within the spectrum of this project. And I think one of the great takeaways from all of the discussions as the municipalities gathered together is they do have a lot more commonalities in certain types of things than they originally had in some of their early discussions, right? So being able to understand that there are 24 kinds of things. How do we want to almost paint by number, right? Years ago when we were all a bit younger, having that sort of paint by number where we could find all of the like items or like areas and identify that is the kind of rose color over here, or we have some blues over in different municipalities. How are those similar? So we took a look then at being able to apply those different types of character being what's on the landscape. In some cases, topographically, some distinctions were made. Density of development was made, or the types of land uses, meaning if it were residential in some case or commercial in other cases, in the scale of that. We then took a shot at an overall map. The municipalities have looked at this overall map as well as their individual maps numerous times over the last 2 years or so. And I believe that within the distinctions of where the districts are and have your current designations, a lot of those boundaries have stayed relatively intact. But trying to fit within those parameters of this regional discussion, how could they apply those 24 kinds of districts? So not all districts appear in every municipality. And that is where it starts to go into the discussion that Ted had about the sharing of uses, and Mary Liz got into even further. So that you can see out in the western part of the municipalities, there are larger swaths of some green, light green landscape, and then maybe some other areas that may be a lighter color in yellow. Those areas really have a tie with a much more rural character, and retaining that rural character became imperative as part of those discussions. That was a driver. And as that driver then threaded into some of the other village areas and into the suburban areas and into the city areas, there was a lot then that the communities were able to explore and identify that the uses within each of these districts was also going to become something that was very distinguished. Mary Liz hit on an important topic, one of the most important topics of this overall project, and that is of the sharing, meaning that presently, as municipalities need to host all of the land uses if they have an individualized zoning ordinance, right? Doing all of it themselves. The whole range of uses needs to be hosted. With this, there's now the opportunity in some of the more rural areas to share and in providing agriculture as a land use to some of the municipalities where that may not exist. And that's a win-win. Another kind of win-win, maybe in terms of a scale as it relates to sort of that higher highway commercial or the larger scale commercial. Planned commercial, commercial industrial are kinds of the categories that also supplement those larger scale highway or high commercial uses. So again, being able to look at this as a canvas of the whole rather than 9 individual canvases was a focus. So in breaking that out then, each of the municipalities falls within one of the types of transects. Mary Liz introduced that term, and I'll get into that a little bit more here. Within the rural transect, there are 4 of the 9 municipalities. There is Waverly, Newton, West Abington, and Dalton. And by and large, again, they do not have all 24, but they have some general characteristics where there's similarities in their rural areas and in some of their rural single family areas, as well as in some cases, a bit of the mixed use, right? Where there are some crossroads. That became important. The suburban generally focuses on South Abington. Again, as Mary Liz was introducing sort of that language, you can see how it applies where Clark's Green and Clark's Summit are in the town, really start with a set of more densely identified areas of single family, as well as some mixed use that we'll get into. Scranton and Dunmore fall within the city category of this transect. As we move over into sort of the non-residential components of the transect, so we were having largely the rural resource and the residential on this slide exhibit, we move into the other part of the exhibit that looks at how there is, and you can see how each of these transects is applied when we pull it down from sort of this master list at the top, that there are certain things and certain commonalities that municipalities have, but not every municipality has every transect. Again, the beauty of being able to share in that character, and ultimately as land uses get assigned to each one of these individual zoning categories. How did that happen? How did land use assignments happen? So when the initial discussions were underway, each of the municipalities, as I mentioned, examined what was happening as part of their current ordinances and those patterns for land use. There was a set, almost like a criteria of and categorization of residential, the civic, the institutional, the conservation. And we grouped all of the land uses that are presently within the municipalities called out within the ordinances. I believe there were over 170 or near 175 uses that exist within all of the books today. One of the questions was, are all 175 plus or minus necessary to uphold? There were overlaps, but in some cases, there are some slight distinctions. So all of the municipalities participating had the opportunity to use this database. We created a database, and being able to identify which uses of those that were identified as possibilities seemed to be most appropriately assigned to the districts in which we're going to get painted on the map. So after we compiled all of these responses, dozens and dozens of responses coming back from the municipalities, and then going through iterations. And so that was just a first blush, right, in terms of their selections. We've then gone through with the municipalities to customize each of the districts that apply to them, and then through multiple iterations of multiple revisions of their ordinances through the last 2 years, taking a look at how those uses get assigned. So in this example, this was a village mixed use that was applicable to one of the rural areas. The land uses are all called out in one sheet side. The dimensional characteristics are associated with that are also categorized. And then identifying that in certain situations, depending upon setbacks or depending upon the types of land uses, how there may be relationship to things happening on the lot. So these are a selection of preferred lot configurations were made. That does not mean that someone has to develop in a very specific way, but there are certain things where there is a clear relationship because zoning is looking at health, safety, and welfare, that there are important topics that are covered in how that can come about on a lot, so that health, safety, and welfare are really driving the decisions about the kinds of uses that are here. Just as all of the municipalities today have a distinction of some uses are permitted by right, some uses require conditional use, and in a few cases, municipalities require special exceptions. Those are the kinds of processes that were also discussed and reaffirmed in each of the municipalities' books, because they go in front of the different decision-making bodies. And so as part of this zoning update, the tie between, again, permitted uses by right, conditional uses, and special exceptions all were evaluated and assigned. Again, other kinds of districts had a different complexion. So you can see that the uses assigned to those areas may be very different. And especially if we look at sort of a rural type of landscape, that there is something where there is a lesser density, right? Where it's important to retaining the rural character of those landscapes, and the densities assigned to those being very important, as well as then the way in which access or certain ties were happening as part of the road infrastructure. Again, keeping in mind health, safety, and welfare. So trying to put a pictorial aspect of zoning to each of the districts is something then that these are guides where, again, character can be considered, and how is there a relationship between what exists and, in some cases then, what is new development, or in other municipalities, what may be infill development. So with that, there is quite a bit, right, that each of the municipalities have come to the table, had discussions about how they can share and look at their uses uniquely, as well as then how certain municipalities are able to offer that unique offering to the others, so that the burden of that use is then absorbed into one particular municipality. In this sharing and in this analysis and in the preparation of the draft, the dialogue that has occurred between the collective committee as well as within the individual municipalities has been quite a journey. And it is time where I think, Mary Liz, if there are other thoughts that you may have to those points, or that you would like to consider, or Ted, for the group, then we would just want to hit them now. Thank you so much.
I just want to go through I just want to read out when, as of right now, the public hearings are going to be for each municipality. Again, this is going to be advertised March 22nd and March 29th in the Scranton Times. If a representative from the municipality would like to say something, I'll go in alphabetical order. I'll give you the date of the hearing, and then if somebody from that municipality would like to say a few words, I guess, Joe, you'll have to unmute them. Clark's Green. The public hearing is going to be 6:30 on Wednesday, April 21st. And if somebody from Clark's Green would like to say a few words, let us know. Joe, can you unmute Al Weincheck? Okay, Al, you should be able to unmute yourself if you. There you go.
There we go. Yes, we're ready to go, and I just wanted to let any participants know that our draft ordinance is available on our website and also at the municipal building for review by the public, as well as the new zoning map, proposed new zoning map, and also the quick views on the transects. So if anyone is participating or listening in from Clark's Green and is interested in taking a look at those things, if they would do so, and they can contact any borough council or myself through the borough website, and we can help them go through it or explain things to them. Thank you.
Okay, Clark Summit is next. I know we're ahead of everybody, but if Shannon, you'd like to say a few words about your project.
Yeah, in Clark Summit Borough, as was indicated in the introduction, Clark Summit Borough Council has already adopted the revised zoning ordinance for Clark Summit Borough. That's available at the borough building. There's also a link on the website, and obviously the county also has a link to those materials.
Okay, hang on a sec. I got something that messed up here. Okay. Okay, next on the list is Daltonborough. Public hearing right now is scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, April 8th. If there's anybody on from Dalton, if you would like to say a few words. I know it to be Al Probst or Elizabeth Bonds or Joe. I don't know who was on. I can't see everybody's.
Mary Liz, I don't think I have anybody. This is Joe.
Is there anybody out there from Dalton?
Please enter the chat box.
No?
I don't have it from Dalton.
Okay. Okay. It is supposed to be on their website, and you could also call the borough building if you need specific information as well. And we could get that to you if anybody would like it. Next is Dunmore Borough. Public hearing is set for 6:30 p.m. on Monday, April 12th. That will be at the Dunmore Community Center. And if somebody from Dunmore, either Carol or Joe Lawrence, would like to say something. Joe, if you'd unmute them.
Yes, I'd like everyone to know that we have our draft and our maps available at the borough building. You could always give us a call down there, ask for Joe or myself, or And we also have them available online on our website. Thank you very much.
Okay, Newton Township is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Monday, April 12th at the Newton Township Municipal Building. If Scott or Steve is on, if you'd like to say.
Mary Liz, we have someone from Dalton on.
We do?
Yes.
Are they unmuted?
I asked Frank to unmute. Yep,
Okay.
I sent the.
Okay, who do we have from Dalton?
Okay,
Oh,
Mary
Frank.
Liz, it's Frank Bollock, and you are correct in terms of our public hearing, and the ordinance is available on our website. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and then Newton, Scott or Steve. If you could unmute Scott Hahn or Steve Satari.
I'm here.
Hi, Scott.
So the township's website is still down, but if they call the township or myself anytime, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, City of Scranton. Right now, that's scheduled for 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 20th. I believe that'll be virtually. And I believe we have Don King on, if we could unmute Don.
Yeah, that's correct, Mary Liz. We're working on getting the draft of the map and the ordinance up on our website. We have a new website, but we should have that up by the end of the week. If anybody has any questions about our particular ordinance, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. My information's on the City of Scranton website, www.scrantonpa.gov.
Okay, thanks, Don. South Abington Township right now is scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on Monday, April 12th at the Township Municipal Building on Shady Lane Road. Dave O'Neill, I know, is on, if you'd like to say a word or two, Dave.
That's correct, Mary Liz. Our ordinance is not up. Our proposed ordinance is not up on our website yet. We're still working on that, but everything should be a go for the April hearing.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, West Abington Township is scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 6th at the Dalton Fire Hall. And if we have Richard or Ken on from West Abington, if you'd like to say a word. Richard Scherger, Ken Kinsel or Klinkle. If somebody's here from West Abington, can you just type in the chat box so we know?
Mary Liz, I don't have anybody that you mentioned.
Okay,
You said Richard,
Richard Scherg.
and what was the other name?
Ken, is it Klinkle or Kinsel? I'm not sure his last name.
I do not have anybody in the chat currently, or the participants.
Okay. Okay. You could call the township secretary or email the township secretary for information there. And if you email us and let us know if you'd like that information, we'll get it to you. Again, all of everything I just said is going to be in the Scranton Times, March 22nd, March 29th. Oh, I did miss Waverly. I'm sorry. Waverly is having their hearing on, I believe, 6:30 on May 10th. They're going to be the last one. They're not included in the advertising because they're a month behind everybody, and they will advertise separately when the hearing comes up for them. If there's somebody on from Waverly, if you'd like to say a word or two, Christine, Jeff. Christine, are you there? Christine Capozzi.
Hi, this is Jeff. Yeah, Waverly will be taking care of that separately. Anybody needs anything, go up to the borough or the township office up on just outside of Waverly. You can stop in there and ask for Christine. Thank you.
Okay. That really concludes the, Carolyn. Carolyn has a question.
For a couple of them, I just wanted to reemphasize something that you did say, Mary Liz, where the availability of the present draft is linked to or through the county's site.
Correct.
So if that address then can take you there, and Mary Liz was directing you towards that zoning ordinance section, you'll be able to find it. And there are several components. There is text. A lot of people are probably very interested in the maps. And then there are some of those pictorial elements to it. So it's quite a package. The municipalities have been working incredibly through iterations and the sharing that they are doing. I think it's also notable that where they have the opportunity to have further discussions about some of the things that are in their present ordinances that are to be updated. They've also addressed that. And in other cases, there are significant language or dimensions within the documents that they've chosen to retain some of their present densities and things like that, because they know that the fabric of the communities is important. So through the individual websites, or where Mary Liz pointed you all to the collective website, you can get that full picture there. Thank you so much.
And again, that's the county's website, lackawannacounty.org. It's on the homepage. Just scroll down and it says review Scranton Abington's draft ordinances. Okay, I guess, Ted, if we want to do questions now.
Sure, yeah. So if anyone has any questions, as we said before, feel free to put them in the chat box. I see we do have one question so far asking for clarification on the West Abington hearing date. So if you could just read off the date and time again, Mary Liz, I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, it is Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. on April 6th at the Dalton Fire Company.
Thank you. So we have a question in the chat right now. Was there an attempt to make city transects more mixed use?
Don, would you like to address that, or Carolyn?
There was that exploration. So the assignment of the districts was the first part of that. And then taking a look again at some of the map changes and the district boundaries have also been re-examined as part of this. And Dawn, you've been in the nitty gritty of looking at many versions, right, of those maps. So if you have some additional items to that, I would encourage you, because the city has been working towards that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the proposed map, most of them are called mixed use. We have town mixed use, residential, neighborhood mixed use. So there was a real effort to really, in the definitions and the uses that are allowed in the zones, to make mixed use much more prevalent in the older ordinance.
Great question.
Okay, another question here. So are wetlands included in land use? Does this constitute something for ordinances with regards to restricting impact from property owners to impact wetlands vital for stormwater protection? For example, invasive species and damming adjacent to wetlands.
Carolyn, you think you could?
I can take a first shot, sure.
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the nature of this question is something that the communities with the rural resources probably explored the most. From a specific land use line item, wetlands were not prevalent as in each of the communities' lists. In terms of considerations for how those were related to the stormwater management, of which Mary Liz is most familiar, right, with some of those types of things that have been impacting the region at the ordinance level for stormwater and how they're folded in. In certain cases, the element of density, but lot coverage was also a consideration for how the lands could be developed. And of course, then those resources would be falling in with those pervious areas. So not specifically as a land use item, but several of the components that go into development, and when coupled with what the state criteria are, as well as what the municipalities have adopted as part of their stormwater management and floodplain ordinances, those get covered sort of in that secondary way, or indirect way, I should say. Anything
Right.
else, Mary
Yeah,
Liz?
I just want to say, yeah, wetlands aren't really considered a land use. It's just more of a characteristic on the ground. Any type of development would need to do some type of wetlands impact or something like that. Like, it's not a specific land use. Again, and regarding wetlands or stormwater, there are probably references in the zoning to other ordinances that address those types of regulations, like the stormwater management ordinances. I know all the municipalities have the floodplain management ordinances, which everybody has brand new, just adopted in August of this past year because FEMA just updated the maps. Again, not necessarily a zoning land use thing, but referenced when you're developing property to other ordinances as well, and as well as meeting the zoning, the land densities and the setbacks and the lot sizes and stuff as well. And wetlands are generally factored out of, the lot areas as well.
You can also go in when the bulk of the ordinance maps are up and look at the zones that each municipalities have labeled conservation, and thus look at the land uses that are allowed in the conservation zones. So you'll be able to go and see that, generally speaking, it's a very limited amount of land uses that are allowed in the zones that the municipalities designated for conservation.
Is that it for questions?
Yeah, I think that's it for questions. We'll do a last call real quick in case anybody has something that they're writing or working on. But other than that, Mary Liz or Carolyn?
Yeah, if anybody would like, again, the specific information, if you missed it, you couldn't write it down fast enough or whatever, email either myself or Joe. I know you were emailing Joe for the link. Give me a call. I could get you that information. And then again, the specifics for the hearings will be in the newspaper March 22nd, March 29th, with the exception of Waverly, which is a month behind, and they will be doing theirs separately, probably a few weeks after March 29th.
As we go into that meeting phase and the communities are considering the documents and their adoption, it is something where the municipalities, the ordinances become applicable upon all of the municipalities enacting them. So there's going to be that meeting discussion happening throughout this spring, and you'll be apprised, right, as part of those discussions as to what each community does. And upon the whole, then they'll have that effect, and the sharing of uses will then be able to begin.
If there's no more questions, one last call. Okay, thank everybody for participating. And like I said, look out for the ads in the newspaper the next 2 weeks, and hopefully you'll be attending the pertinent municipality or municipalities that you would like more specific information from.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.